So hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Denver Broncos UK podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Rich, and as usual I'm joined by Dave Hazelden and Stuart Brunt. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you. Been a long time. Glad to be back.
Yeah, don't like off season.
Yeah, so how have you guys been keeping busy in the last few months? Dave, what have you been up to?
Usual season ticket holders at my local rugby team, Lee Centurions. Watching my little lad playing rugby for his junior team, and we've recently embarked on a whole family thing together where we've started our own YouTube channel called the Hazelden Family of Six, where we just basically, it's a vlogging channel. We do a few challenges and a few skits and that. Quite sure Thomas will put the link to the channel in the description below. I'm quite sure he'll do that for me.
You could start doing our YouTube channel, Dave, couldn't you?
Well,
you need to get your priorities right.
Well, you know, let's we'll have a look at that and look into it. But yeah, it's called the Hazelden Family of Six. Please check us out. If you like it, please subscribe. The more subscribers we get, then the better vlogs and stuff we can come. And it could benefit Broncos UK in the long run as well.
And Stuart, how have you been keeping yourself busy?
I don't do anything, mate. Broncos finished. I just finished to take sabbatical, I suppose I might call it. I do hibernate. I'm not interested at all. I came back Saturday when the first preseason game was on. Back into reading Twitter again, finding out what's been going on and stuff like that. But I generally, from the draft onwards, I just take a little bit of a break. But other than that, I don't do anything. I'm a bit boring.
Yeah, well, I've just been playing cricket. That's about it.
So you've been just as boring as Stuart then?
Yeah, there you go then. That's it.
We're all so boring, Dave. We should all start our YouTube channels.
But I've just got to say one thing to you, Stuart, in regards to cricket. You ready?
You want?
Lancashire.
Yeah. That's it. That's all right then. We're all good.
Is that your one thing out of the way, Dave?
I feel better now, thank you.
Good.
I feel cleansed now.
You've just before we forget, you can still sign up to our fantasy leagues on denverbroncosuk.com for the upcoming season. The deadline closes on Friday, and then we'll send out all the details next week. But on to the real stuff.
Just quick mention as well the Picks League as well.
The Picks League, yeah, we'll be launching the Picks League. We'll leave that with you, Dave. Check out the Facebook group and Twitter for that. Yes, football did return this week.
Yay!
For a brief period in, I'd say, the third quarter, got quite nice, and you thought, yes, football's back. But for the rest of the time, it wasn't quite what we all expected, was it, Stuart, on Saturday night?
You can either overreact or you can take it for what its face value is. Everyone's gone about Paxton Lynch failing yet again, and there's people like myself that would like to see him get more of a chance, but even people like me are running thin on patience. That being said, he was against the second team from Minnesota, one of the best teams from last year. The second team is always the hungriest, so they want to prove they can get in the first lineup and get some playtime. Chad Kelly, he did all right, but there was no pass rush from the third string, and I always call third string in pre-season the footlocker temporary Christmas staff, because that's basically what they are. None of them make rosters, or very few of them. And it's just making up numbers. It'll be interesting to see how it goes this Saturday against the Bears, because obviously Kelly's been promoted over Paxton. But I was more disappointed with Joe Woods and the first string defence not having a game plan. For him to come out and say there was no game plan, he wanted to put scheme shells in against arguably one of the Super Bowl favourites this year was a bit of a disappointment, if I'm being honest with you.
Dave, what were your thoughts on everything that happened on Saturday night?
Yeah, funnily enough, I've sort of like in my notes, I think Woods is in the last chance saloon myself personally. He's not. I'm deeply concerned about our secondary, to be honest with you. I know Talib's made a big thing about he's gone now and it's no longer the no-fly zone. And I think from what we saw on Saturday, I'm sort of beginning to think he's right. I mean, I've just been quickly on Twitter earlier on, and I do, forgive me if I pronounce this wrong, is it Nikki Javabla? Is that how you say her name?
Nikki, yeah.
She basically said backup QBs have thrown 6 interceptions and had loads of tips passes in today's practice against the Bears. So I'm deeply worried because our offense seems to be performing better against our defense and our secondary than last season. Is it a case of its secondaries regressed? Is that the right word? Rather than been the same or got better? So for me, the defence, never thought I would say it, worried me, to be honest with you.
Well, I think in the secondary we were missing Tremaine Brock. Is probably, if he gets fit and healthy, he's going to be the number 3 cornerback. And obviously Sewer Cravens as well at safety, although Will Parks did impress me when he played. So maybe safety is not as worrying, but when you bring a fit and firing Sewer Cravens and Tremaine Brock back in there, it could make things look a lot better.
With the sounds of it as well, though, and I'm quite chuffed I've wrote this actually, I sort of dropped the mic. I thought, could we have a duel in the crown with Josie? So sorry about that, but
Dave.
you know, from what I've been reading, he's been quite impressive, and I personally think we've been lacking. You know, especially in his position at that particular linebacker position, I felt as though we've been lacking something. I was glad when we drafted him because I thought linebackers for the last few seasons for me has been one of the positions I felt we was weakest at. So he could possibly be, you know, maybe a turning point for us in that defence.
Stuart, you've put a tweet and I think you were saying you think he'll take Todd Davis' spot, did you say?
Yeah, the depth chart came out for the Chicago game, and then I'm just looking around at where I would change things, and it's little bits that I don't. So like when you watch football, Tom, when you watch Liverpool, is it?
Yeah, Liverpool.
Yeah, when you go to a pre-season game there and you've got a new signing, what do the teams do? They play him with the first team 60 minutes, 50 minutes, whatever, and then take him off and put a youngster on. So when I look at Denver doing the same sort of thing there now, I don't see why the first string plays so little in the first quarter and then the second string plays with the second string quarterback. Why would, for me, to get somebody like Cortland Sutton and Deshaun Hamilton, I would prefer them to be playing with the first string instead of Sanders and Demaryius Thomas, say, to get first team reps with Case Keenum and to sharpen up his route running. So I would be putting them people in there to get like Josie Jewell some more playtime. I'd be putting him in over Todd Davis. Todd Davis is not gonna survive long enough ahead of Jewell because Jewell's outperforming him in every single practice. He's outperformed him in the preseason game against Minnesota, even though he made a few mistakes. So that just shows that he's going to take his job eventually. So why not give him starting numbers now and let Todd Davis play against the second string and let Chad Kelly, as he comes up with the second offence, play with Demaryius Thomas and Sanders, and let Case Keenum play with Deshaun Hamilton and Cortland Sutton. That's what I was looking at, just from the depth chart point of view.
Anyway, moving on from that, earlier in the week I spoke to Andy Lindahl. I'm delighted to welcome Andy Lindahl to the Denver Broncos UK podcast. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me again. How are you?
I'm all good. First game of pre-season last night was a 42-28 defeat to the Minnesota Vikings, and we'll start off. Only saw a couple of series from the first teamers, and there seemed to be a few struggles there. So, what were your thoughts on that?
Honestly, I expect more. I thought the Broncos' starting offense would look the way they've looked in practice, which has been phenomenal, and they didn't. And Ronald Leary was not playing; he was not dressed. That's someone they're going to be very cautious with because he's very important at left guard. And I think we saw some of that because, unfortunately, with Leary not playing, we saw what happened last night when Max Garcia goes back in there. And as nice a kid as Max is just not – Max just isn't progressing. Unfortunately, there's a number of young guys from the past few drafts that just aren't progressing the way you'd hope. And so that shows you how important Ronald Leary is. They didn't quite get the push that I wanted. Now, again, to be fair, it was just a couple of drives. They never got a chance to get their rhythm. There's a lot of guys adjusting to a new offense, as I think Musgrave has tweaked some things. But all I can say is it did not look the way you wanted it to.
And then the defense as well didn't start off brilliantly. A couple of big run plays in particular.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. The defense was almost more disappointing to me than the offense, and that's because part of the reason why we thought this offense was good during at least what we've seen through training camp the last couple of weeks is because they were moving the ball on what we assumed was still a pretty good defense. Unfortunately, from what I witnessed last night, now I wonder if the defense is as good as I thought. Now, again, I caution everybody, it's base package against base package, which means as basic as you can get. They weren't trying anything fancy. They'd not game plan anything specific for the Vikings, but the Vikings were down 3 starting offensive linemen, and they're going to have some problems at that position, and they ran right through the Broncos as if they weren't there. Von Miller didn't play, but the rest of the group did, and as much as I want to just gloss over this as a first preseason game, I don't think you can.
So it is the first preseason game, so are you telling us that we should be a little bit worried about what we saw?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not a ring the alarm kind of guy. I know some in the media like to kind of ride the highs and the lows, and I think you've got to even out. I mean, I've been around enough players that have told me you've just got to take an even tone and see how it all plays out, but I don't like what I saw last night. I mean, one team, I guess here's the problem. One team looked like they were in the conference championship game, and one team looked like they didn't make the playoffs. And unfortunately, that's how both teams finished last year. The Minnesota Vikings were in the NFC championship game, and the Broncos couldn't make the playoffs. And now it doesn't look like too much has changed from a year ago. I think they'll look better against Chicago. I just expected more, and that's why I'm a little concerned. I just expected better. I really did think the Broncos offense would move the ball better than they did, and I thought you'd see a few plays to Courtland Sutton. But again, it is the first preseason game. I keep telling myself that, but I don't think we can completely brush this aside and say everything's fixed either.
And then potentially just as disappointing as that was Paxton Lynch's performance last night, and perhaps Chad Kelly has earned his right now to have some time with the twos. What are your thoughts on the backup quarterback?
Well, I'll be honest with you. My thoughts are that it is time to move on from Paxton Lynch because he's shown you. I mean, this is year three, and he was freaked out, and he didn't want to throw down the field. He didn't want to throw into tight spaces. He's running around. He's throwing short passes when you need long yardage on third down. He's not even giving guys a chance to make a play, and I'm kind of just done with it. I don't know what else to say. The kid has not progressed at all that I can tell. Now, I will caution everyone, Chad Kelly made the game a lot of fun. Chad Kelly made watching that second half worth it, but he was going against threes. He was going against guys that really aren't going to be in the league. That's not the kind of competition that he'll face if he were to be the starter, for example, for some crazy reason when they open against the Seahawks in early September. So I know the crowd in the stadium was chanting Chad's name, and I think that's awesome. He hasn't got a chance to play a game in 2 years. He's fought back from some personal stuff just to get back on the field. So it's a heck of a story, and I would like to see Chad develop more. Honestly, I've seen more development out of Chad than I've seen out of Paxton the last couple of years. I've seen improvement from Chad just from OTAs. So I think I'm intrigued by what Chad could be a couple years from now. But as far as this season goes, I think you got to go get a veteran quarterback to be your backup quarterback, whether it's Matt Moore, whether it's trading for a Teddy Bridgewater. But that search has to start this week in my mind. There's no more hoping Paxton can get it. Again, what we saw last night in a home game, he couldn't run the 2-minute offense, and he was afraid to throw downfield. I think the kid's mentally wrecked.
Can we get anything for Paxton, or is he just going to have to get cut?
Not after last night. I mean, Thomas, honestly, he's been passed by a third stringer. He's been passed by a second, 7th round pick at quarterback because, to me, Chad Kelly showed he's ready to pass Paxton. So who in the league is going to trade for a kid that won't throw downfield? I mean, we all like to say we should be able to trade for something because he's a former first-round pick, but this just is you tell me what team is going to trade for Paxton right now. And I'm being harsh on the kid, and in some ways I feel bad, but honestly, this is year 3, and he's battling for a backup job. And what we saw last night on TV or at the stadium, is what I've watched for 2 weeks and what I've watched for the most part in minicamp. So I just don't think this is getting any better. I don't think it's getting fixed.
Could you say that he's regressed since he first came in as a Bronco?
I can't even say he's regressed, Thomas, because he just does. It's the same thing. I feel like I've been watching the same reel of tape for 3 years, Now, look, he's had better moments in practice for sure because he throws he can throw a nice deep pass. He can hit some guys down the sideline, and that's his favorite thing to do. But we're finding out in the NFL, for any fan that didn't know it by now, you should see wholeheartedly, they don't let you have that when they know that's what you're good at. And believe me, Clancy Barone, their old O-line coach, the Broncos' old O-line coach, is over in Minnesota, taking over for the suddenly deceased Tony Sperano. So he knows a little something about Paxton. I'm sure Trevor could give him a few hints, and Kyle Sloter. I'm sure that the Vikings had all the intel they wanted to on what the Broncos would do for their base offense. But the reality is he just doesn't want to throw NFL passes. He doesn't want to throw that 10 to 15-yarder into a tight window with a linebacker breathing down a receiver's neck and hitting a guy out of his break. That's what Chad was doing. He was living in the middle of the field, throwing to guys at a spot, not trying to throw to guys that were looking at him. And that just hasn't changed for Paxton. He wants guys to be looking at him before he throws them the football, and you just don't. That's not the NFL. They don't let you do that.
So let's try and find some positives now. What were the pick up on from last night's game?
Well, again, Chad Kelly does look like he's worth developing, so I would give that as a positive. Royce Freeman, what I loved about last night, Thomas, is Royce Freeman kind of has been slow after having a nice start the first week of training camp. He was a little disappointing, shall we say, the second week of training camp. When they put the pads on, I didn't quite see the burst that I wanted to. He got in that game last night. He showed nice feel. He really did a great job cutting in and out. He had a run that was every bit as nice as Saquon Barkley's when he scored that touchdown and finally injected some life into that stadium. I thought D'Angelo Henderson looked good. There's a local kid here because he went to the University of Colorado that we're all a big fan of, and Philip Lindsay. I thought you saw his suddenness, his speed. He just has a burst. That 4.3 is on display when he's out there. He made the nice reception out of the backfield, ran it in for the second touchdown of the evening. I would caution people on Isaiah McKenzie. Isaiah had a really nice punt return that I thought was fun to watch, but I think Isaiah still has a way to go before he earns the trust back of some of his teammates and coaches after what happened a year ago, but a good start for him nonetheless. I thought Bradley Chubb did some good things. He was a little up and down, but, he showed an ability to stuff the run, so on and so forth. And Marquette King was phenomenal. Now, we saw way too much of him, but Marquette King was really good. So it's not all bad. Again, the Minnesota Vikings were a conference championship team. So they already are ahead of what the Broncos, where the Broncos are. And Kirk Cousins in his one series looked good. And again, even though I've kind of freaked out on you a little bit because this is still raw from last night for me, I will caution everybody that a game, a game isn't about the first quarter. It's not about the first drive. Just like the Broncos came back with their third-team offense, who's to say they couldn't have done that with the first-team offense? There was no rhythm. The starters knew it would be a quick night, and it was. Let's just hope for better results the next couple games.
And last preseason, we went 4-0, so we all know that it doesn't tell you about what's to come.
Yeah, and Thomas, honestly, of everything I saw last night, the one thing that's really going to bother me more than anything, because when offenses don't game plan for a defensive deficiency, this is kind of what it looks like when you're just trying to run base plays, especially when the other team has your old quarterback that very well knows what your base plays are. The thing that bothered me the most was how much we gave up runs and how we didn't set an edge defensively with our first guys out there. That's the one thing that I'm going to watch very closely.
And so there were a few players missing from last night's game as you've mentioned, Ronald Leary, Sua Cravens, Tremaine Brock. When do we think that they'll be back healthy, and will we be able to see them next week against Chicago?
It's a great question. I don't think we'll see Ronald Leary. If we were to see Ronald Leary, my guess is he would be the third preseason game. Ronald Leary is practicing, but I can just tell you right now, they don't want Ronald Leary. They want him healthy. They don't want him banged up. They don't want anything bugging him. We saw his importance as to what they want to do in the run game. So I think if we see him, it'll be for a quick glance in the third preseason game, probably not against the Bears. Brock, they claimed, was close. Now, Tremaine Brock has a hamstring injury. That's a muscle injury. It was a very hot night. The Broncos have been pretty lucky. They've pretty much had cool mornings that have gradually warmed up. They haven't dealt with heat. They haven't dealt with humidity because of the time of day that they practice. And we've had a lot of sort of unseasonably cooler mornings. So that was really the hottest sort of environment these players have had to go through in a game-like conditions in last night. And I don't think they wanted to take a chance with Brock. So I do think we'll probably see him if he continues to progress with no setbacks, and it is a hamstring, you never know. I would think we would see him against the Bears. Sua Cravens, I don't quite know what's going on there. That's that sore knee. He did have the knee surgery. You know, Jeff Hireman's been kind of bitten by the same thing. I would hope we'd see Sua, but honestly, Will Parks played really well. I'll be honest with you, Thomas. I kind of feel like Will Parks is holding off Sua. Sua needs to get on the field as much as we all ballyhooed his signing and had a little celebration that they had traded for him. I think Will Parks is playing really good football right now, and I'm not sure if Sua better get back on the field just to challenge for that starting spot we thought he might have.
And then looking ahead, obviously, preseason, it's all about those players battling to make the roster. Who, at the start, that was probably on the outside looking in, do you now think has a great chance of getting on the 53-man roster?
Thomas, it's a great question, and we'll be watching it the next 3 weeks. The kid that I liked, that I thought could be their slot guy, is River Craycraft. Now, River Craycraft, it was interesting last night. River Craycraft and Tim Patrick, who is a very big-bodied receiver, big like Cortland Sutton, both of them bigger than Demaryius Thomas, to give folks out there some idea. Tim Patrick, he wears number 81 if you want to look for him in the next game. Craycraft is 15 if you want to look for him when they play the Bears next Saturday here in the States. I would say this. Those are two guys I would watch, and I didn't think either one of them really had a shot. But when the first depth chart came out, they were both legitimately ahead of Isaiah McKenzie, the kid who returned the punt for the touchdown last night. Now, Isaiah is a smaller guy, and I don't think he provides you the same burst that Phillip Lindsay does out of the backfield. So although everybody's trying to, there are a few folks in town here trying to claim Isaiah McKenzie had won his position on the team with that one punt return. I don't think that's the case. I would watch Patrick. I would watch River Craycraft. Craycraft is a very good slot guy. Now, he made a mistake last night by not letting that punt the punt got over his head, got behind him. You know, he came up to play it on a hop. It was a very tricky hop, but as I was talking to one of my former player friends on the sideline, they told me you just can't let that get past you when you're trying to make the team, and he did. So we'll see how that affects him. But I do think those are two guys to watch. And Jeff Holland, the kid that had the sack towards the end, I believe he's number 46. He might be 45. I think he's 46. Look for Jeff Holland. That's a kid that we were intrigued by as a free agent. He got the most money out of the Broncos to sign as an undrafted free agent. He has been very effective in the pass rush, and he's a guy that I think when you've got good pass rushers and with the uncertainty about Shane Ray's future, I'd watch for a Jeff Holland to continue to try to maybe make some plays and turn some heads. And the other thing that could be interesting, they picked up a tackle yesterday. I can't remember his name. They picked him up off waivers from the Bengals. Maybe just kind of see if he factors into the mix. I think Menelik Watson being hurt is going to kill Menelik Watson. And I don't know if they love what they've got at a backup left tackle. So I think they're just still trying to figure out who could be the swing left tackle and maybe make Billy Turner a swing guard.
And then it's still very early and the season's still 3 weeks away. But what do you think? What do you hope or think the Broncos can do this season? Well,
I don't know. The offense I was seeing on display in practice, I thought could be a 9-10 win offense with what I thought was a very good defense that's still going to rush the passer, and I still think the defense will come around. But I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that some of my expectations were tempered by last night. Like I said, if what we see in practice can show up with the crispness that they've had, they did not run a lot of the plays we've seen in practice. It couldn't have been more basic. So I'm going to temper it. I'm going to try to balance these comments as best I can. They didn't run a lot of even what we're seeing in practice, and I promise you what they're showing us in practice is not going to be stuff they roll out all the time in games. But that said, the fact that they really didn't move the ball, the fact that they really didn't look much different than a year ago, makes me wonder if this is a playoff contending team. And I think if they stay healthy, 9 to 10 wins is possible. Maybe a chance at the division, maybe a chance at a wild card. Right now, my gut tells me a wild card's more realistic than the division, but I don't know. The division, I don't know if it's going to be great. But I'll tell you this, Thomas, if they suffer injuries at left guard or at right tackle or at quarterback, they're in trouble. There just doesn't feel like there's a lot of depth. And so an injury there could put this back where we were a year ago, which I hope doesn't happen.
And then, so next week against the Bears, we'll probably see the starters for a bit longer. So will that give us a bigger indication, or do we still temper it if they do well because it's the Bears?
Yeah, that's the great point, Thomas. It is the Bears, so I don't think you get too excited. Now, here's the situation. I bet the starters go a quarter because of what we saw. I wasn't sure how long. That second preseason game is always tricky. If they look like they did, I'll tell you this, if they were to have 3 3-and-outs in the possessions that were the first quarter, maybe they come back for the second quarter. I'd be surprised if that happened. But all that being said, I think the third preseason game will still be your best indicator. And quite honestly, it's, I don't know, Thomas, it's just interesting. I feel like the new preseason, truthfully, is that first month of the regular season because guys play so little in the actual preseason anymore that I feel like it takes all the teams about a month to get their game legs underneath them and really playing the way they want to. So we probably won't have a really great indicator as to how things may look until that third week of September.
And finally, could you just tell us a bit about what you do and how Broncos UK fans can follow your work?
Well, if they want, so I work with former Bronco Tyler Columbus on Orange and Blue 760. If you have any kind of smartphone and you can listen to Tyler and I, we're 7 to 10 a.m. in the Mountain Time Zone, which is 9 to noon in the Eastern Time Zone, which maybe puts it a little bit closer to what your folks are used to going off of. So you can find us on Orange and Blue 760. We also, if you follow us on Twitter, I'm at Andy KOA Sports, at Andrew Mason. I know another person, at Mace Denver is what he actually is on Twitter. Another guy you talk to a lot. We do a TV show off our radio show that you can watch every night, and Andrew's pretty good about tweeting out the links because the Broncos give it to him. So there's a few ways to consume us. You can listen to us game day, but if you got some thoughts, you can always text us. It's 57739, and you guys can jump in the conversation even if, you don't want to, I don't know. You got to listen to the show to know what we're talking about.
Right, thanks a lot, Andy. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it a lot, and we'll hope to speak to you again throughout the season.
Yeah, let's hope we talk after a better game, Thomas. Thank you.
So thanks to Andy coming on the show, and now we'll try and look at some positives. So who have you guys been impressed by so far in training camp and the game on Saturday night? Dave?
The new backfield we've got, it seems to be very exciting. There's just like a thin piece of paper between them all, isn't there? The only fear is out of them all is, are they going to find use for Janovic? That's my only, because I like him. I always like a fullback. I always like the idea of, high formation, fullback running in and stuff like that. But for me, like I said, the running back corps, for me, seems very exciting for me this year.
And Stuart?
Just the way the draft class is performing in training camp. You've got Isaac Yadom that is tearing up trees, looking absolutely fantastic. You've got Sutton and all his fantastic catches that everyone sees. You've got Rolls Royce that is just tearing through the lines. Chubb's obviously doing Chubb things. You don't get compared to Von Miller and Joey Bosa every day, but he's getting compared to those people on a regular basis during his camp experience. He was terrible in the game, but he's not going to come in and be 30-sack season person. He's got to figure out his ways, his moves, etc., etc., etc. But personally, for me, star of the whole thing there is Joseph Jewell. He will be inside linebacker number 1 by week 6. And Brandon Marshall will be looking over his shoulder, constantly worrying about him until week 6 when he overtakes him, personally. Because the man's just a beast. Absolute beast.
Well, it's always good to have that competition to push players in that position, maybe Brandon Marshall maybe has got a bit complacent the last couple of years because he hasn't had that person to push him.
Like Dave said, inside linebacker has been Denver's issue for a good 3 years now, since Trevathan got injured and then ended up struggling his way to the Super Bowl season and then going off to Chicago. They've had no depth there for a long time. I wrote an article just after the draft. I think it was around May time, one of the last ones I did. And I looked at the last time we had an absolute enforcer, and it was Al Wilson. If you don't remember Al Wilson there, I would definitely go and recommend looking him up because he's one of my all-time players that I've actually witnessed with my own eyes. And since that season, 2006, when he hurt his neck against Seattle and ended up having to be forced to retirement, Denver have never had that tub thumper, that Bobby Wagner, that Patrick Willis, that Ray Lewis, hair on fire. I'm just going to black 6 people just to get at a ball because I can. We have never had that. And Josie Jewell is that. If he gets a chance to develop and he gets the right coaching from the right people and he gets to look at and play the way he wants to play, he will tear up the NFL in 2 years and he will constantly be top 5 mentioned for inside linebacker.
It sounds like as well the team are enjoying having Marquette King on the team as well, because from what I've been looking at, he's knocking 60+ yard punts over for fun.
Well, they got plenty of practice on Saturday, didn't they? So.
Well, and not only that, playing up in Denver Air, Dave, me and you could probably go and do a 50-yarder.
Well, it's funny though because recently England played New Zealand rugby league in Denver, and I actually tweeted to one of the players and said, if you get a chance to kick it, from 60 metres, have a pop. And that's exactly what they did, and they scored from it. So it's amazing this thin air in Denver.
I can't remember who it was, but somebody was someone came up, one of the college kids, and he kicked a 74-yarder. A 74-yard free kick. It's only 75 for a kickoff, I think. It's on the 25-yard line now, isn't it? The kickoff.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So it's basically from kickoff straight in, and a field goal, not a running kickoff, an actual field goal technique. Yeah. 4 steps, 5 steps, whatever it is, and then black, and he kicked it straight through. And I was a college lad coming through. I read it somewhere, but that was up in Denver. That was up in the altitude somewhere. So these people are going to be able to obviously kick it further. But the one thing that King does that not a lot of the others have done with his leg is his accuracy is off the charts. He's such a weapon for us in Denver. The thing is, with the defence that we've got, with the pass rush we've got, with the run defence we've got, with the corners that can cover, if Joe Woods gets cute with all his little packages and he can do some man press coverage and allow the pass rushers to block off alleys and let the run defence do their job, get teams in 3rd and long inside their own 25-yard line, and you watch Chubb and Miller, Shane Ray, Shaq Barrett, you'll have Brandon Marshall probably coming through the gap with Josie Jewell in there, or Bam Bam. But you watch those people, the amount of sacks we'll get. Yeah, okay, they might be able to kick it far, but if they haven't got the accuracy, you don't pin teams back. So having King with his leg that he obviously has because he's proved it for a few years with the Raiders, the minute that he gets a chance to put somebody inside the 15-yard line, the defence gets a massive boost because I'm not starting at the 40 like I was with Colquitt.
Yeah.
I'm not starting at, we're not inside our own territory because we've had an interception 4 times a game, or whatever the case may be there. The defence will get a little bit of hope and, pin their ears back, and that's what we won the Super Bowl on, that exact attitude shown by Wolf and Miller and DeMarcus Ware, Danny Trevathan, those people there. They loved the fact that Peyton Manning would go down and score and allow the defence to just play, knowing that they're going to pass more than run. If they didn't manage to score a touchdown, the field was so short from their end zone to where the offence started, the defence was having a field day. Tom Brady hated it in the championship game against us because he started inside his 30, almost every drive. And that's what you want.
And we have got a question in here from at Doom or something like that. Got a question, a general question, and a Denver question. So the general question: what rule would you change if given the chance? Well, for me, this new leading with a
tackling rule,
a bit shaky in the early stages,
My
to
God.
say the least.
Yep.
So I think I'd probably change that one, but we will give it. We'll see how it goes in the first week of regular football, but I'm not impressed so far. Dave?
What rule would I change? Let me think. One rule I would have liked, actually, and it has been changed, is the kick-off rule. Because I think when I started watching it, I'm not sure whether they kicked from the 20 or not, when I first started watching it. So that the rule I wanted changing has been changed, I think. And obviously the helmet rule as well is one rule I think I would change. That this new rule what's come in.
Stuart?
100% bring the 5-yard face mask penalty back. You can't have a face mask penalty 15 yards for the slightest brush against the helmet when it used to be 5, not 10 years ago. I understand the player safety aspect of it all, but there was a couple of times last year, I don't think it was Denver games, I can't remember, I think it was a Pittsburgh game I was watching, and Le'Veon Bell did a stutter step, or the running back did a stutter step, and the defender ran right past him but just had his arm out and just clipped his face mask.
Yeah.
And Le'Veon Bell, whoever the running back was, just jumped on the floor because the flag was there, knowing that he's got 15 yards for the slightest brush. When if it had been 5 yards, they still would have had to run a third down play. And I just think sometimes it's that.
Would you not call that rule then like accidental face mask?
No, they used to call it. They used to call it face mask, and what did they used to call it? Intentionally grabbing the face mask or something. The different different terminologies between 5 and 15. Yeah. But it's because it's from what the rules are that I've gathered from listening to people like Rich Eisen and Michael Irvin, people like that on NFL Network, is because it's an opinion-based penalty. Yeah. They have to take out parameters so that it's dead easy for fans to see. So, did the face mask gets touched? Yes. What's the punishment for that? 15 yards. So the referee's got an easy decision to make. He doesn't have to go under the hood and watch it and go, he's only put one finger on it, he's only brushed a bit of mud off it, 5 yards is 15 yards, blah, blah, blah. So the game will just keep on flowing. The catch rule that they have is what they were hoping, I think, to be the same sort of black and white, yes and no. Yeah. Catch, no catch. I think that's what they were hoping for, but all it's done is confused a lot of fans with the 2 hands possession, 2 feet terminology. When you watch it in slow-mo and Odell Beckham has got 1 hand on it, he's got perfect grip on it, 2 feet down, takes 2 football moves forward, then he gets pushed out of bounds and the ball comes loose. They're saying it's not a catch because he didn't take the ball to the ground. When you're stood there as a fan going,
caught
that. What are you going on about? But because he's been pushed out of bounds and he's not taken the ball to his body, or he's had it knocked out of his hand maybe just as he's going down to the ground, that's not a catch. Whereas if he's going through the plane into the end zone with it in 1 hand, 2 feet down, touchdown, no matter what happens to the ball.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And so you're sort of there thinking, well, you're supposed to be making this rule black, white, yes, no, catch, no catch. The face mask is supposed to be, do you touch the face mask? Yes, 15-yard penalty. They're supposed to be the same speed in the referee's mind. But while the face mask one is dead easy to see, because as soon as he touches the face mask, it's 15 yards. The catch one is not as clear cut. They punish teams. If you're fast on your feet and you've got a fantastic stutter step or anything like that, and you brush past a face mask, teams are getting absolutely banjoed with punishment when it just needs to be looked at in a little bit of a fair. I mean, I'm a defensive person, so I'm going to say that probably, but it needs to be looked at in a more team balanced. It's team balanced, yeah. They need to look at it as a team balanced event rather than he grabbed the face mask, it's 15 yards, or he brushed the face mask, it's 15 yards.
I tell you what I think is another quite a promiscuous rule, depending on which side you are. Pass interference, because if it's offensive pass interference, it's a 15-yard penalty. whereas offensive is from the point of the penalty. Mm-hmm. So I suppose in that respect, it's like it's one of those rules where you've got to scratch your head out of really and think to yourself, well, like you're saying, why is it that?
I suppose it's a bit like in football. The defensive passing interference is like someone's through on goal and you take them out. Offensive passing interference is the opposition defender's got the ball and you just trip him up in his own half.
The thing that it is as well is they want, when you listen to any of the commissioners from years gone by to now, every single one of them wants bums on seats, they want excitement, they want points, they want touchdowns. So Aaron Rodgers is the absolute master at it, but when he draws somebody offside and he's got a free play, he's not going to throw it 6 yards for a completion. He's going to throw it 80 yards and hope for pass interference. So that's where the ball goes. So he's closer to the end zone. And that's what the rule is set up for. If the wide receiver is frustrated because the cornerback's too good and he grapples him to the ground or he throws his hands up in his face mask and he gets a 10-yard penalty, so what? The offense is, we're 10 yards further back, never mind. And the offense just carries on. So it's an offense-driven game, it's a quarterback-driven game, it's not a cornerback-driven game, it's not a defensive, let's see if we can get 3-0 or 7 threes. That's not what it's for. That's why the rules are bent that way inclined, Dave. I understand what you're saying about it being the same. It probably is, but it's bent that way to allow. It's supposedly like the football I was watching the World Cup this year, where they're supposed to allow close offside decisions so that it allows the attacking team to carry on going and try and score more goals. That's that sort of analogy, I think, like Tom was saying before with the taking him down clear through on goal versus just tripping somebody up.
And then the second question was predictions for this season. So let's just go with a record and whether that gets us in the playoffs, division, wildcard, whatever. So I'm going to go for 10-6, and I'm going to say that's going to win us the division. Dave?
I'd be happy with 8-8, to be honest. I don't want another losing season because I've just... This record we've got where we've not had 2 losing seasons for so long, I want to keep that intact. So for me, 8-8 or 9-7, I'd be happy with. But I agree with you, Tom. I think 10-6. I think we're capable of 10-6.
I think 10-6 could well win the division this year if we can get to that as well. Because none of the Chiefs, you don't know what you're going to get with them. The Raiders look a bit of a shambles at the moment, especially with Khalil Mack.
The rumours are Mack's on his way out. Of course, they've got rid of Marquette King as well. Why would you do that? The best punter in the NFL. Why would you get rid of him? You know what I mean? They're happily imploding, which I'm happy about.
And the Chargers will just keep doing Charger things. They'll keep missing game-winning field goals, probably. So, Stuart, what are you saying?
To win the division, you're going to need 13. Because the Chargers will go 12-4.
No, I can't see the Chargers going 12-4.
Firstly, the Chargers will do well this season.
The Chargers will do well. They'll go 12-4 this year, Chargers. But on a point of Denver there, I've got part of me wants to go 6-10 because the team will implode itself because that's just what it is designed to do with the way the coaches are, the way it is set up at the moment. But Hart has got us going 9-7 and scraping through the wild cards, third in the West, and scraping through in a wild card place.
You look at the AFC though; it's compared to the NFC, it's not really that strong, is it? The AFC, you've got the Patriots and perhaps the Steelers, and then I struggle after that really.
Back in the 90s, I think it was the AFC won 13 out of 14 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
And it was obviously AFC was the powerhouse. It's slightly starting to turn towards NFC at this moment in time. But you could reel off a handful of teams NFC wise that you don't want to play in the playoffs, in the Super Bowl. Sorry.
Yeah.
And then on the AFC side, you've got the Jags, the Patriots, the Steelers, who you don't want to play in the playoffs. That's you want them to take each other out by having a bad year because of how good Jacksonville's defense is, B, Steelers' run game is, and Patriots, obviously, are the Patriots. So you want them three teams to play each other and take each other out.
Yeah.
On the other side of it, squeaking in as a wildcard team, nobody will want to play you because week 17 you've had to put your heart and soul into that game just to make it. So you're going to be running on
adrenaline, and
it's probably more. It's probably magic pixie dust that you're running on coming into that week 17 first week of the playoffs. Because I was watching the Steelers when they went, the first team ever to go from rank 6 to Super Bowl winners with Jerome Bettis, where they went away from home every single game in 2005, I think it was, when they beat Denver in the championship game in Denver. But you've got to have that underdog mentality, but you've got to be so strong with it. You need a core of strength, which I think Denver have got capable of having. They just need a bit of luck. They need a bit of coaching brilliance, whereas other teams can just rely on player skill.
I mean, it doesn't help when your head coach stands there like a rabbit in the headlights, like he was again on Saturday. He looked frightened to death, Vance did. But that doesn't pair well with me, that.
No, but the thing with that, I personally, I'd be more upset week 3, pre-season, if the team is performing like this. If the team are getting blown out, if the first string defence has played for a half and they've conceded 30 points, then that's it. I'll be out in the yard, my head on fire, looking for a roof to jump off. But while it's this at the moment in time, there, no one's interested. Joe Woods, like I said before, I don't understand how he's been allowed. I love Joe Woods. I think he's going to be assistant coach of the year this year. But how he's been allowed to go into a game, first pre-season game, at home, and allowed his players to just go in and do whatever they want to do for a drive because he's not interested in watching film or game planning for the Minnesota Vikings. I don't understand how he's been allowed to do that. Now, Vance Joseph has obviously said to him, do what you want.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Maybe he's done it just to see what they're capable of on their own, off their own back, so to speak.
Because they've gone off scheme rather than playbook. You're asking somebody to define cover 2 for me, define man coverage for me, define zone blocking or zone run or zone blitz, anything like that. There, you're asking them to define that to you when you should be going through all the motions of 4 weeks training camp, 5 weeks training camp, telling them what it means to you as a coach, not what it means to a player. If you say to Stuart Cravens there, what does zone blitz mean to you? And he goes, well, am I in the zone or am I blitzing? And you go, you tell me. What do you mean do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's that mentality you can't have as a coach versus a player. So when Wade Phillips was there and he was player X stands here, player Y stands here, you do this job, go out and show me you can do it. That's what they did for him. Yeah. Now, Joe Woods is obviously doing it a different way. I mean, I'm not in the coach's room, so I've got no idea. But looking at it from the outside, it just looks like it's free reign, do what you want. Now, week 1 pre-season, when you're playing with people that won't be on the squad, right, okay, no worries. You don't want to have them people having access to your playbook in case they go to a rival. That's fair enough, no problem. Yeah. When it gets to week 3 pre-season and you've got your pretty much 45, 46 roster spots sharpied in, I want to see intensity. I want to see the nastiness. I want to see Wolf and Chubb and Ray and Miller and Pecco and Goatsis or Walker. I want to see them ripping heads off. I want to see them ripping offensive linemen to shreds, trying to get at the quarterback, trying to stop run plays. I don't want to see this mamby-pamby. I just touch your shirt there so my gloves get a bit dirty. I don't want to see stuff like that because that's no one wants to see that.
Miller dressed and then wasn't used, and he himself basically was, in a nutshell, he said he was baffled as to why he'd been told to dress and then he wasn't used at all. And then Joseph said, "Oh, we don't want to get him injured."
Well,
exactly, that's fine then.
Might have made that call because
that's fine. You don't want the best player in the NFL. You're not going to want him injured in a meaningless 2-bit game, which is fine. But like you said, Dave, why would you get him to dress? Why would you get him to take his helmet? Because so the fans can get pictures of him in his uniform. What's that? Yeah. Is that what it's for? Let him know what it's for. Tell him. Just say, put your sweats on, but put your shirt over the top there so you can have some pictures with fans and sign some stuff or whatever.
Because he said
you're not going to play.
Yeah, he went through his pre-match routine, he stretched, he got himself ready, psyched up, and then he wasn't used. So I think he was a bit peed off, himself, actually.
No doubt, but from a coach point of view, I would think that, like I said right at the very beginning, the guaranteed Sharpie penned in first teamers should be part of the second string, and the second stringers fighting for jobs should be penciled into the first string, so that they play with the people around them. That if player X gets injured, all right, let's use Von Miller as an example. Say Von Miller gets injured the first game against Seattle, and Shaq Barrett comes in, and he's not used to Pecco at the side of him.
Yeah.
Oh, it's going to take us 3 games to get him used to... Hang on a minute. What's the whole point of pre-season then?
Yeah.
Pecco gets injured and Shelby Harris comes in. Oh, Shelby Harris isn't used to playing with Goatsis. Oh, that's a bad example. Shelby Harris isn't used to playing with DeMarcus Walker. Oh, it's going to take 3 games to get... Well, hang on a minute. What's the point of pre-season? These questions could easily be answered in these 4 pointless games, because they are pointless games. They should be 2, not 4.
I would sooner this season be extended by 2 games.
Yeah. I'm definitely for that.
Because I think that it was bounded around, wasn't it, a few seasons ago?
I think it's Jerry. It's Jerry Jones. Yeah, I think it's Jerry Jones that's trying to force it through, because the Cowboys, when you buy a season ticket with the Cowboys, you pay for 3 playoff games and 2 pre-season games in the price of your season ticket. And if they don't make the playoffs, you get the price for those 3 post-season game tickets given back to you. But the whole point then is, for the 21 weeks of the season, pre-season and regular season, Jerry Jones has got your money.
Yeah.
So he's making money off it. So he wants it to be 4 playoff games and 2 pre-season games, because he can charge more for a post-season game than he can for a pre-season game. So he's got even more of your money with the season still up in the air. Yeah. So I think it's people like him that want to actually force stuff like that. But from a fan's point of view, I'd much rather see 2 pre-season games and then an extra round of playoffs. But then does it dilute then the playoff magic that we've seen so many times as Denver fans? You're going to get teams that don't deserve to be there, 7 and 9 teams that don't deserve to be there, 6 and 10 teams knocking on doors, and it's just wrong. You shouldn't. My personal opinion.
So I suppose in a way, it sort of sorts the draft out a little bit more, as well as you might have ended up, say, in position, let's say for argument's sake, 28 in the draft, because you've managed to make the playoffs.
Exactly.
You pick a little bit higher, a little bit lower.
Yeah.
I think that's the only other implications. I mean, these joint practices for me, these should take away two pre-season games away, because you're sort of playing against another team.
Of course, they've got full pads on. They've got coaches. They've got referees there. So that should, like you say, that should be classed as a pre-season game. So therefore, then you'd play 3 pre-season games, wouldn't you? Which is what you probably would do. You'd probably play 2nd and 3rd string week 1. You'd probably play 1st, 2nd, and 3rd strings week 2, and then you'd play 1st and 2nd week 3.
Yeah.
And finally, 3 things you want to see this week, Dave.
The
game, that is.
In the game as a whole, or against us, or
just for the Broncos, 3 games you want to see, 3 players you want to do well, 3 things, just anything.
I'd like to see the running back room sorted out this week. I know it's not going to do. I'd like to see more from Joe Wood's book against Chicago. I'd like to feel more happy that our run defence hasn't gone to CAC, which it seemed to have done against Minnesota, and a little bit more love for Paxton Lynch, I think.
Stuart?
I disagree a lot with Dave's defensive calls there, because, like I say, it was all designed to be nothing nothing technical for them.
If I'm wrong, then good. I get to see what I want then, don't I?
Of course you will. 100% you will. You'll be the happiest man in the thing there because technically they should come with a game plan this week. But from my point of view there, I want to see Case Keenum complete more than one pass. I want Case Keenum to try and hit all 4 wide receivers that we've got that are showing a lot of promise, DTE, Sutton and Hamilton. I want to see a bit of inventiveness. I know it's pre-season, you don't want to give your magical plays away, but just something, just a couple of plays with motion added to them that no one's seen before, that everyone sits and goes, hang on a minute, that's not right, what's he doing that for? Things like that. I want to see the tight ends be involved a lot more. You're hearing Jeff Hoyman is the fastest man on the field, and linebackers and safeties can't keep up with him. So why is he doing 3-yard hitches and little outs and feeds?
Right, well, unfortunately that's all we've got time for in this week's podcast. Dave and Stuart, thanks for joining me as usual.
No problem, buddy.
And we'll see you all next week, and hopefully we'll be reflecting on a much improved performance from the Broncos.
Go Broncos!